The Australian government is going after your superannuation fund. Yeah, they're looking into your retirement money, your money, not the government's money, your money. And they're looking for ways to take that money and potentially invest it into Australian infrastructure and Australian projects. Let me explain here exactly what's going on. So last week, there was a big conversation happening, AFR's Superannuation Roundtable, with a lot of important people that have been in the industry for a long time. And Anthony Albanese, our Prime Minister, made these opening remarks. Australian superannuation has become a big global investor. Early in the Trump administration, when there was a bit of turmoil between Australia and the United States, there were two major things going for Australia. One was the rare earth minerals, and America needs those minerals, and we're exceptionally good at digging things out of the ground and selling it overseas. The other thing was the massive amount of money from our superannuation funds that were being invested in US stocks and companies. And it is predicted by 2035 that Australia would have invested up to 1.4 trillion US dollars in the United States from our superannuation funds. That is a massive amount of money. And you can see why we suddenly had leverage when talking through those tariff negotiations early in the Trump administration. We're even seeing Australian super invest $500 million in India's infrastructure. So this is when Anthony Albanese made a turn in the conversation and stated that these super funds, instead of investing overseas in the United States, India, and other countries, why not use some of that money here in Australia instead and invest here locally? Kind of makes sense. It could be a good potential thing, but let's clear up some details here. Now, Dan Andrews backed him on this idea and termed it the National Recovery Fund. We can invest it in clean energy, financing corporations, housing, infrastructure, clean water, all that stuff. And this is a thing that everyone has pretty much clipped and been posting online. Anthony Albanese said there's a real potential here to see superannuation funds as a real national asset for Australia. A national asset, not your asset, not the member's asset, a national asset. And this is what got everyone upset. He got told by multiple people, multiple big banks out there, not to touch the superannuation funds. And this is a quote from Westpac's chief executive, Anthony Miller. He said, "Don't touch the super complex. Don't direct it. Don't tell it where to go." And AMP's Shane Oliver said pretty much the same thing. Funds are accountable for their own strategies. The government direction would be a serious error. This is probably the sharpest line that came out from Don Russell, the chairman of Australian Super, the biggest fund here in Australia. And he said plainly that the fund is not an arm of Australian foreign policy. The Indian money was about diversification and returns. Full stop. Nothing else. This is the version of the story that everyone is pushing at the moment, and it's not quite right. The government can't step in and dictate where the money should be going. You can't tell the super funds what to do. Let me just play you this clip here from Tax Accounting Invest.
No, they cannot. They cannot just go in and raid the super fund and go, I'm going to use it for our own need. But can the government encourage or create policies that make it more attractive for super funds to invest in Australian projects or government issued securities? Yes.
Now, this is all correct. The government can't tell the super fund where to put the money, but it can create some options for those super funds so that they could potentially look into them and invest in Australian first projects. So this potentially could be a good thing as long as there is a return on the investment for the super funds itself and its members. That's an important thing here. We can't just say, let's build all these roads and infrastructure and ports with absolutely no return. Let's just spend people's money and expect people to be okay with that. That's not what we're after here. Us, as Australian citizens, we want a return on our superannuation at that roughly 10% mark, which we see in most super funds, which is fantastic. We don't want to see our money just being sunk into Australian mismanaged projects. That's the last thing that we want to see. Now, of course, this is still all really early days and we don't know which direction the government will go in regards to all of this. Hopefully we do see a positive take here and investment in Australian projects. That personally, I think would be absolutely amazing, as long as there is a return on investment for our super funds. That's the key important thing here. And the other key important thing is that the super funds aren't nationalized and the money is just taken. We have the problem of the squeeze of retirement. We have people on pensions and the government needs to pay for those pensions. And then we have these super funds that people are suddenly going to take out their money out of and retire with. So we're going to see the super funds diminish and lower in the amount of money that is in those super funds and the expenditure increase for the pensions itself. So the government is staring at this and know this is coming. Over the next 10 years, more and more people will be retiring. More people will be relying on the pension funds. More people will be relying on their superannuation, and that money will slowly start to disappear. And this government here is looking for ways to fill that gap and increase their spending. So let me know, guys, down below in the comments, what do you think the government will be doing in the next couple of years in regards to our superannuation? How are they going to be paying for our pensions? And what could potentially happen with our super funds in general? Just a reminder, guys, this isn't financial advice. This is all for your education, and be informed with what's actually happening within the space so that you can make a better decision for your retirement. Talk to your financial planner, talk to your accountant, and make sure that their advice suits your situation. Now, guys, if you learned something here, make sure you hit that thumbs up, like, subscribe. I've got YouTube memberships down below. I've got Buy Me a Coffee links as well. Helps me continue with this work of keeping you guys informed of what's happening, what the government's doing, and potentially making changes for the best. Anyway, guys, stay positive out there, and we'll see you in the next video.